Listen-only mode.
All right, guys. Sorry for the delay. Had a couple technical difficulties there. Hopefully, you there, Craig?
Yeah, we're here.
Awesome, super, and excellent. Well, welcome to the Federal Interagency Briefing. We're going to be talking about refactoring for legacy systems and doing modernizations of legacy systems. So welcome to this program. We really appreciate you guys joining us. Can you guys see my screen? Everything looks good?
Yeah, we're okay on this side, Dave.
All right, good deal. Just want to make sure, as we have the difficulty with us, we have Arne, Craig, and myself. I'm the Director of Government Solutions. Say hello, Arne.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Craig. Then Craig's the other guy you've been hearing. Say hey, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, good deal. Welcome there. We want to welcome a whole bunch of folks that are joining us today. We have folks from GSA, VA, USAID, USAID, Army, some folks from Transportation, NOAA, Commerce, specifically in the Census, and Department of Labor, some folks from USDA, Air Force, and NASA. So welcome. This is a situation that's happening across the board in most instances in the federal space. There's a lot of legacy systems out there, so we appreciate you guys being here. Real quick, disclaimer, this event is not associated or affiliated with or endorsed by any agency and is provided to the audience for informational purposes only. All participation is voluntary, and any engagement by you folks and us folks is not an indication of endorsement of commitment to buy or purchase anything from any vendor. So we got that out of the way. Now we can talk fluently. As far as what we're going to do here, we're going to talk a little bit about us, do some introductions, and we'll talk about why we're here, some of the initiatives that are coming down on everybody's head, legacy modernization options that are out there, and exploring specifically one of those options being automated factoring. We'll talk. We have some questions already, and we'll do some additional Q&A, and we'll also talk about avoiding the gotchas and some funding this process for your agency and some action items as we move on. So if there's anything that you would like to know, just pop open that side screen, and we will definitely include you in the conversation. Craig, tell us a little bit about innoWake and how we guys got started and what we're doing here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So innoWake essentially is a company that specializes in modernizing legacy mainframe systems. We pride ourselves on hiring only the best of the best. We have 80 or more actually highly skilled team members all over the world. We have multiple locations in the U.S., but our headquarters are in Austin, Texas. And because of our 100% project success rate with large government modernization projects, we actually consider ourselves the leaders in automated modernization technologies and methodologies. To that end, we have a partner of Lowe Consulting, which I'm sure everybody has heard of, and our primary expertise is in the .NET, Java, Natural, COBOL, and any of the ancillary legacy and modern applications. So, Dave, you're going to take over?
I'm going to take over for a second. You got like a heck of a delay happening. I'm not exactly sure. We had a little bit of an issue earlier. I'm not exactly sure why that's happening. So we'll see what we can do to fix that. So why are you folks here? I'm going to open up this poll real quick, and we'll take a look. We'll launch this poll, and while we're doing that, I'll see if we can fix this problem with the audio, and figure out a way around that. So go ahead and fill out that and let us know why you're here. And do you want to know more about legacy modernization? Did you just renew a legacy license? Because if you did, chances are you're up against you're kind of irritated with that because it winds up being very difficult to negotiate. Some folks we've talked to have had a modernization fail, and some folks have a problem with current migration, and that's why you're here. And then some other folks are going to need legacy modernization in the future. Go ahead and answer that question if you would. And so we appreciate you guys participating in that. And we'll close that out in just a second and give just another couple of seconds for that. Awesome. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. As far as what that is, we got several folks in each one of these, and we'll dive into some of each of one of these as we go, and get you guys caught up to speed on all of those. Some of the federal initiatives that are coming down on folks' heads. It started out back in 2009, where GAO started to look at being able to strengthen the investment board oversight, and those are the folks that are overseeing some of the legacy systems as well as progressing into cloud computing and the like. And this is reinforced by a presidential memorandum back in 2010, improving the energy efficiency. Most folks are familiar with that. Executive Order 13589, promoting efficient spending back in November of 2011. And then it keeps on rolling through as reducing the footprint back in 2012. And finally, one of the later ones is strengthening the IT portfolio management by M-1309, which is back in May of 2012 as well. So these are the types of things that agencies have been having to deal with as far as working through and taking that old technology and moving it forward. I remember talking with Steve Van Rokel, the former CIO of the United States, and legacy modernization, a big thing for him, and currently through the organization and through the administration as well. Tell us a little bit about the legacy modernization from the standpoint, and we'll get a good idea of how this is affecting things.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, what is the legacy system? Obviously, these are typically, mainframe systems that applications have been run on for the past 10, 20, even 30 years old, primarily written in typically COBOL or Natural, maybe some PL1. We see a lot of assembler in there. Quite frankly, they've reached the end of their life, right? You're still locked into the technology. There's a difficult migration path to get to the new, the new platforms. So that's what we see as legacy systems. And I'm sure the majority of the agencies here are dealing with those same sort of issues that we see with these. Now, what do you modernize to? There's a tremendous amount of options for you. We know that the federal government obviously has the cloud first initiative for everything. So obviously virtual and cloud environment is something that should be considered. Your typical standard server environment, the n-tiered client server environment, obviously is always an option. You could have a hybrid of all three of those, which we're probably seeing more and more of. But the key here is you want to make sure that you you're able to take your systems into more of a modern, architecture that allows for things such as better reporting and to get into things like, maybe some business intelligence and some analytics, using relational database systems and not being locked into the old vSAM and Adabase and DB2 type of files, right, for things like SQL and Oracle. So some of the issues that we see. So, there's a high cost of software licensing. There's a high cost of maintenance. Go to the next one. Mm-hmm. We've got, so these systems being as old as they are poorly or completely undocumented systems. So that means that your IT team is the main base of knowledge of the business rules. And quite frankly, they're reaching retirement. They're either at end of their life or they're ready to retire, and trying to replace that talent pool is extremely difficult. We see that here with our company. So you need to have access to real-time data so you can make faster and better decisions and better serve your mission. And obviously, with the legacy systems, they're essentially incompatible with any of the new modern platforms and services that are available, like we mentioned with data analytics, with online service and mobile. So if you had to sort of write your own book as to what you would consider to be the desired outcomes of modernization, here's what we typically would see during these initial meetings, is that you, first and foremost, your developers need to continue to modify the systems to be able to handle new regulations, any new initiatives that come down the pipe. So going through a modernization process, you do not want to have code freeze. You want to be able to continue doing what you're doing, not just to the developers, but maybe even more importantly to the end users. You can't disrupt that mission. You also want to be able to make sure that you continue to use whatever ALM you're currently using, your application lifecycle management tools, and be able to have the migration process integrate specifically with what you already know and go forward on that basis. You want to have very maintainable code. And along with that, that code should have high recognition value for your existing developers. That's going to lower the time of training and allow you to actually use your current resources, your current developing resources, to be able to continue or start on the actual modernization process. Here's the big one. It's no big bang. You don't want a huge big bang deployment. You want as little impact or no impact on the end users as possible. We also want to make sure, or you also want to make sure that you're able to handle your current compliance issues such as 508 and ADA, and of course control the costs. So here's the meat and the potatoes. What are the 4 options of modernization, 3 of which I'm sure everybody has already seen? So we have the rewrite or re-engineering. Typically, that's going to be a higher cost and higher risk. We have the COTS replacement, but COTS replacement, you know, you're looking at something that's more of a fit for general applications like accounting or inventory or human capital management. So for mission critical features that you have developed, you know, the IP that you've developed over the years, chances are they're not going to have them. If they do, they're going to need to be modified to fit you specifically. And once you get into modifying you know, commercial off-the-shelf products, let's say you know, an SAP type of product or a JD Edwards, you're now locked into very costly upgrades because now they have to retrofit all the modifications and retrain, and it's almost like, in many cases, it can be almost like a rip and replace. Not to mention, recently read that a Gartner study stated that greater than 25% of all COTS implementations fail. Pretty risky.
So 25% of the COTS, when agencies have done that, have failed?
Absolutely.
That's an impressive.
Yep, that's in a Gartner study. Even more than that, Dave, and that's where a big risk comes into play. Not to mention that you may not even get 80% of what you're looking for and still have to modify the rest. So something to always consider. What we're calling lift and shift may probably be more commonly known as replatforming. But what I see as the issue is this, is that you're taking, let's say, your Natural or your COBOL, you're simply lifting it off of the mainframe, but you're putting that same exact code on the n-tiered system, a Unix system. So what did you really get out of that? It's a low risk for the agency, but you're actually more locked, you know, into your vendor because now you have to run some other vendor-specific applications in order to make that work, or the runtimes, or whatever. You're also still at that limited technical future, right? Because you're still running the old technology, of which the newer stuff is just simply not based on. Okay, so what is the 4th option? It's what we call automated refactoring. So let's get into that just a little bit. So what is it? Well, our automated refactoring methodology, we typically do this in a two-phase process. Phase 1 is let's migrate from your code over to the new platform, and then step 2 is let's modernize on the new platform and not do it on the old one. So how do we do that? Well, we do a like-for-like migration of your natural code, of your COBOL code. We deal with your JCL and your batch, and we actually turn that into either Java or .NET running in the new environment. All the data is migrated to either SQL, Oracle, or DB2. The batch process is also migrated, and we actually even have a tool that can run JCL commands in the new environment. It's an iterative approach, which goes back to what we said before. So your mission continues during the entire process. It does not disrupt the agency the way we have all this working. We have the tooling for migrations, for the modernization, for the developers, and user acceptance testings. So we're fully able to handle that. We can deploy, and I think this is really important, and we've seen this be sort of a turning point for some of our customers, is that we can deploy incrementally. And why that's important is a number of reasons. First is the biggest cause of failure for modernizations is the big bang deployment, which is what you absolutely want to try to limit or eliminate completely. The other thing about deploying incrementally is that we have the ability to run your legacy applications and the migrated applications in parallel, allowing us to say, let's just take a very small subset of your user base, maybe just one location at a time, and have them run the new system, and everybody else is running the old system. So we can develop a process that will bring users on incrementally without the big bang, and it just makes the entire process so much easier and substantially lowers the risk of the big bang. And the last thing on automated refactoring, what's I believe very unique to us, we can prove that this is going to work on your systems or not because we have a proof of concept. Essentially what that is, I'm not going to get into any detail, but we can analyze your system, determine how ready it is for automated refactoring. Should it turn out to be, you know, in good shape for automatic refactoring, we can actually take a subset of your system, run it through our magic, and you can see the actual results on the back end. You can see the exact same application running from the legacy and how it now runs in the new modern technology, and see that it's exactly the same thing, and there was very little impact to the end users. All right. So why do you want to consider automated refactoring? Well, number one, it meets all desired outcomes in any of the initiatives. So no code freeze. We're not disrupting the mission. It's very low impact on the users initially. We can integrate with your current source code management. It's all maintainable, very recognizable code. We reduce the risk of the team having the knowledge on the system by bringing it over. We maintain the compliance and, of course, the controlled cost. But plus, we are providing for the developers familiar tooling. Our tooling for the developers is based on Eclipse, which is very well known out there in the developer world. So we're not giving them anything that's necessarily going to be brand new, but we're also going to be providing additional functionality in the way that they can develop going forward. The code is fully automated. That means there's no errors in the code on the final product. If there ends up being something wrong, we retool our automated conversion and run it again until there are absolutely no errors. So what that does is that minimizes the amount of subject matter experts that are required during this process. Okay, we're able to run it in parallel. There's no big bang. We have quick wins via data access. So, for example, we had a big project down in the state of Texas, where after 6 months, I believe it was, they had the ability to take their data and start running analytics and business intelligence against it. So you're not waiting until a 5-year project is done in order to start finding the benefits and the value of going through a modernization process. I think that's a really, really big important. And of course, we're going to go back to this again. We can actually test this whole thing with a pilot on your system.
Craig, real quick, I think that's one of the biggest issues that I've heard as far as folks that are trying to get to that next level is that it seems like it's all or nothing, and then that big bang happens, and there's no real way to test it incrementally and be able to do that proof of concept. And as you said, whether it will work or not, and and the difference is you spend a little bit of money to test it, and it works, and then you can move forward from there. And then if it doesn't work, you're not blowing tens of millions of dollars like a lot of agencies have over the past 7-8 years that I've seen it happening. So it's very impressive. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a reason you test drive a car before you buy it, right? And we're providing a great way to sort of tiptoe into this. And then even better than that, we're providing an analysis tool that if your system is not ready for it, we don't want any part of it either, right? And so at least you can eliminate one possible option of modernization after the analysis during a proof of concept. So it's a great way to sort of just get your feet wet without the huge risk of a major project. So, and also we have the ability to do that within particular funding vehicles that make it easy to be able to handle, getting into a proof of concept without it having a major impact.
Super.
So,
yeah, and we have a bunch of questions that I'll read some of those off. If you have additional questions, pop it into the questions tab on the right hand side. Just open it up and just start asking the questions. We'll get to what we have here. What is the resource commitment of agency IT personnel for modernization? I guess it depends on what you're doing, but if you're talking about refactoring, let's talk about that. Let's talk about maybe a comparison between the two. How about that?
So I want to also let everyone know with Arne Gerhard here, he is the co-founder of innoWake. He also has a lot more project knowledge than I do, so it's great that he's along here with us. So should we need to get into that a little bit more? So I'm actually going to throw that one over to Arne because that's going to be more specific to
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the
there?
experience is that very often, and especially, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can now. Go ahead.
Dave?
Yep.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so our experience is that very often if the business knowledge encapsulated in a system needs to be extracted in order to create the system that's replacing the legacy system, there is really a lot of subject matter expertise you need in order to support a modernization of the system. So for example, with one of our customers, we did this migration and they had estimated a very large amount of subject matter expertise required to get the knowledge out of the system, and with our approach we really didn't need that. We really only need the subject matter experts when it comes to testing the system and finding out if it still does what it did in the past, and that's really where the subject matter expertise comes in. Well, on top of that, the tooling automates and records what the subject matter experts are doing with the system. We can record in the old system on 3270 terminals and turn that into test cases, JUnit, NUnit, XUnit test cases that are run back against the refactored application to even further reduce the amount of time we need subject matter experts for. So while they are required, our approach tries to place a minimal amount of time strain onto them.
And the next one is, can the legacy and migrated system run in parallel? We kind of talked about that, and how? How does that work?
So that's an interesting point. One of the things that are even hard to imagine with a rewritten system or a commercial off-the-shelf system is that the new system and the old system actually work in parallel. You immediately face the issue of data synchronicity. How do I keep the data that was entered in the new system in the old system, and vice versa? And we've devised a method that allows us to share the legacy data with the new application that essentially gives us this possibility to operate the old and the new system in parallel. And that opens up a whole avenue of options for risk-reduced deployment into production. So with our tooling, you can go ahead and keep this completely transparent in production. In the state of Colorado, no one knew that this project was going on. We started off with a close user base, close to where the project was happening, in parallel on the new system while the old system was still running. And if that new user base required, detected problems or something didn't work in production, the fallback scenario was really easy. We just go back to the old system, pretending nothing happened. So we had a really safe way of doing this by operating the old and the new system in parallel. And that's a very unique thing we can do.
Next question. What does a proof of concept entail?
In the proof of concept, we have various stages. We can go from looking at the system and estimating how complicated it is, which we would call our bronze proof of concept, all the way to a gold proof of concept, where we take the system, make it run, so that it is something that can be demonstrated to executive management as a viable approach. So really from very little effort, analysis, all the way to doing some of the work that the actual project would be on a small subset of the system. And that gives it this digestible chunk that management can make a decision on.
Okay, very good. How can we tell that it will work with our system?
That's a good question. Of course, we can't cover all the technology that's out there in the legacy system. Our specialization is mainframe technology, natural database, PL1, and COBOL. And we have an analysis toolkit that reads all the source artifacts that exist for natural database. That is your sysobjh, the programs, the DDMs, the FDTs, ADA-REP. For COBOL, it's the source code, the copybooks, the data definition, the IMS or IDMS. For PL1, it's the source code, etc. And we take all these very technical resources that are easy to extract from the system and run it through our big old sausage grinder, and it spits out the problem areas of where we can deal with it, of where we can't. And just to give you an idea of the expectation, it is that we are somewhere from 95 to 99 point, a number of nines behind it, % coverage of the legacy system. But it also points out where there's third-party tools in use, where there's assembler in use, where there's things that sometimes our customers don't even knew that these were still around.
That's right.
With one customer, we discovered an old Kodak imaging system that they had totally forgotten they even had. So it's pretty interesting, it's pretty revealing, but we can run it through the grinder and find these things out.
Well, you never know when you're going to need one of those Kodak imaging systems again, right? So
certainly not one running on the mainframe. Absolutely.
That's right. So have you done this in other government applications?
It's interesting. We have, while we have insurance and finance, our biggest sector is government, and it is state government. And the reason for that is the unique features that Craig outlined in the beginning. You know, the DMV can't close its door for 2 years saying we're doing a system modernization.
Right.
Not only do the doors have to remain open, the downcoming legislation needs to be implemented. So our feature of no code freeze, of dealing with iterative deployment over large geographical areas, is all the things that government requires, and we're really good at that.
Super. This is kind of specific. I think Craig mentioned this before. We had a modernization moving from COBOL to COTS, and it failed. Can you help?
That's interesting. So this is we've seen many such failures, and we've seen them because people sometimes take this approach. Let's try and understand what the COBOL system did, and then extract the business rules, extract the knowledge in it, and put it into the COTS system. That is where I would assume a number of things could have happened. You don't know what the system does. The subject matter experts are gone. Really, only what the system does is its documentation. And trying to extract that becomes very hard. You need all kinds of people to tell you what the system does, and we've seen these failures. And that's where we could come in and help, because we use the actual source code that implements the system's functionality as the baseline for the new system. So we can guarantee that this system does at least what the old system does, and after the initial refactoring, improve the system to where it needs to be to match 100% of the requirements. So that is a typical scenario where our approach and solution comes in as a very good match.
Super. Yeah, and we can take that one offline for specifics and get in contact with the folks about that to see exactly what the issue was. But that's super. Will this presentation be made available? Yes, we'll make the presentation available. It's also being recorded, and hopefully, considering the technical issues, we've got those licked and it's actually working. And can you provide a sample scope of work? And the answer is yes. We will be providing sample scopes of work. It depends on what you guys have, so we'll put some of those out for you as well, to give you some examples there. Any other questions that you folks want to ask? Let us know. You can raise your hand, or you can put it in the question panel. And I think that's it for the questions and answers. So if there's any more that come along, we will absolutely include that in our follow-up and make sure that you get those. So in avoiding the gotcha. So anytime you're dealing with a major type of even a minor legacy systems upgrade, the agencies that are involved in this have mission critical systems that are affected by this, right? So that's why it's so important to be able to look at the things that may get you in trouble. First, start thinking about your transition early. And a lot of folks or at least some folks just had a license that for a legacy system and mainframe licensing and maintenance that they just did. So you can start now to be thinking, because that's a 5-year license, right, Craig? That's one of the things that's at issue here, is that we have a long licensing on ramp, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, Davis, because that's actually a double-edged sword. So obviously it's great to start thinking early so things can be pre-planned and make that all work. But we're also very good at coming in, let's say 18 months before they know the next software AG licensing has to come up or the next maintenance comes up. Because we are automated, one of the things that's inherent about being automated is that we have the ability to come in and kind of run everything through very quickly to give them a sort of a quick out from an impending doom of the next license that's available. So we would prefer everybody start thinking early, but if you're in a crunch, we work just as well there.
Yep. And one of the things that you said earlier is avoiding the big bang, avoiding that, hey, we got to switch everything over, and then finding out that all the work that had been done to that point doesn't work. So taking a process that you can do incrementally will help to avoid that big bang type of thing, and using the proof of concept to validate your approach, so that you can, as Arne said, taking pieces of that and moving that through your system, as opposed to jumping full bore into the whole thing in a very expensive type of environment. And as far as making sure that the folks that you're reaching out to, you're going to have to partner with somebody to do these transitions. So make sure that you verify the capabilities and their ability to transition data that you're looking for is part of their core, as opposed to just part of a larger piece of a major integration. And if you're going to do refactoring, look for 100%. And explain what that means, Craig, so everybody knows what 100% is, as opposed to portions thereof.
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. So what you want to do is you want to avoid some of the gotchas of, we're going to be able to do some automated refactoring for you. So that sum's going to bring up some issues. When you get to the other end of the process, they're going to have to review the code to make sure it all worked appropriately. They're going to have to make modifications to the code on the other side, because it wasn't 100% automated. So where the efficiencies come in is that again, is that should something come through on the other end that doesn't look like it came through correctly, we're not going to have subject matter experts on that side to make the fix. We're going to retool, and we're going to run it through again until it's 100% functional the way it's supposed to be. Anything less than 100% requires a lot more effort on the back end, and we think that's where a big advantage is.
Absolutely. And watching out for brain drain. This is retiring. Right, this is people that are retiring from that have all the industry and knowledge of your working systems, and they're leaving because, hey, they're not being replaced. Those folks just aren't coming out of high school and college saying, hey, we want to program COBOL, right?
Yeah, exactly. This kind of goes back to making sure that you start thinking early, right? So we pretty much know that COBOL's running, sort of at the end of its life. Those developers are typically, much older, and you don't want to get yourself into a crunch where all of a sudden they've retired and now it's time to do a modernization. We need to start thinking about that early. Sort of on the natural side, they're maybe, let's say, 5 years younger, 10 years younger. But again, you're going to end up in the same crunch, right? There are no colleges out there right now that are teaching natural COBOL PL1 programmers. It's a dying technology, and the future is in the modern side. So yeah, you don't want to get to the point where you're already dealing with that brain drain. And I'm sure most people on this call have already realized that, but let's put it down and make sure it's discussed.
That's right. So real quick, for funding and procuring this, first of all, it meets the requirements to access CIO funding initiatives. And for folks that are in procurement, some of those funds were pulled and then reinstituted. And this happened a couple of years ago with Steve Van Rokel, where he pulled the funding, cut funding by 10%, but reinstated it for 5% for legacy upgrades and modernization of systems or security components. All those pieces were rolled into that to kind of help be the carrot and the stick approach. And that's one of the things that's happening. Now, recently, Tony Scott took over, and we've been trading emails, Tony and I have, about this. So I'm not really sure exactly where we stand with those funds and how that's going to be administered, but it looks like that type of funding is going to continue. And one of the ways that you can definitely benefit in your agency is using a proof of concept. First of all, it falls under simplified acquisitions most of the time, and you don't have to do a J&A or anything like that. If you need to run it through a particular vehicle, Deloitte, we can run it through Deloitte's IDIQ if you want to do that. Service disabled, veteran-owned partners if it's somebody with a VA, and 8A partners if we need to get this through in some form or fashion. We have partners that we can utilize for soup and some of the other pieces. We do have a GSA schedule that we're on, and you can buy directly through that. And again, it falls under the simplified acquisition because in most instances it's less than $150,000. So we can take a look at what's happening from a proof of concept, give you some deliverables right out, and you'll know whether or not it'll work from a standpoint for your agency and be able to fund it. And it's nowhere near the kind of costs that you're looking at for the other three ways of pulling your information into a new platform. So those are the types of things that we can do as far as that. And now I'm going to ask a quick question as to when you expect a modernization. And these generally take some time. So some folks are in it right now. They need it. They need to know about it right away, and we can talk about that. And to your point, Craig, where we can come to a place where we can help folks in a much shorter timeline when you're under the crunch. So we can do that, and we can test that pretty quickly. And whether or not it's going to be this coming fiscal year or rolling out to 2017, 2018. I know that there's initiatives in the VA for 16 and 17, and obviously it's funding as far as whether or not it's going to get funded. So we'll go ahead and close that out. And let's see if we can get back to that. There we go. And so with that, as far as follow-ups, you can expect we'll have links to the initiatives and the memoranda that have happened. We'll give you a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and give you links to the video. We're going to sum up all the questions and provide answers for folks who would like to ask some more questions, as well as give you a sample scope of work. We'll shoot out as well at innoWake's capabilities, and then responding to requests for information. If you've asked for information, we're going to respond to that as well. So look forward to hearing from us there. But that email will come in the next few days after we get all the pieces together and can assemble that for you. And with that, we're going to let you go. We're absolutely 2 minutes shy of our promise to keep this under 40 minutes. So any parting comments from you, Arne and Craig, that you would like to tell the folks before we jump off?
Yeah, sorry, Dave, I had a little mute issue there. Yeah, so obviously what we gave everybody was the Reader's Digest version of what it is that we do, just a very high-level approach, to give you another tool in your toolbox. So we would love to hear from any of the people on the line today, and if they want some more details, we're happy to come down to DC and meet with you guys and just have a frank discussion about what it is that we do, and does it fit, would it fit, what are the options. So reach out and let's see if we can get something going.
Super. Arne, you have anything before we jump?
Oh, no, great that we made it on time. I could talk for 1 minute to bring it exactly to 40 minutes, but I'm going to spare us that.
There you go. Awesome. Again, thanks for joining us. There's our contact information. Feel free to reach out at any time. We'll be glad to help you in whatever modernization project that you have. And we'll look forward to talking with you in the future for the folks that have asked us to get in contact. And with that, we will let you go. Enjoy the rest of your summer. And for the program and project management folks, things pretty much run as they do. But for the procurement people, I know that you guys are up against it for fiscal year end. So try to stay sane, and we will catch you on the other side in October, where we can talk about this a little bit more. So thanks again for joining us, and we shall talk to you later.